Good morning. My name is Scott Hare. I'm grateful to be here with all of you. We are this morning, just as a heads up, we are on Do Not Commit Adultery. And so it is not going to be PG-13, but it could be PG if that's, I think words like that would be alerting to anyone, parent-wise. And so I'm going to talk for a little while, and you can help make some decisions before we go into that. And then we're going to stand up and read the scripture, and if you need to make those decisions then as well. It's not going to be overwhelming, but I just feel like we need to give everybody the respect of that heads up, in case you haven't seen it coming for a while. But you could be a guest, so I don't know. I'm trying to make sure. As I noted, when we did sexual education for me in my life, the first place we did it was in church. We did it over a year, and we did it with all of our youth leaders, and we did it in one room. We're having this whole conversation, and in the other side of the hallway were our parents having the exact same conversations, which was an incredibly healthy way of doing things, and also super awkward ride homes, but that's okay. So I just want to make sure that you know that for me, talking about these things in church is old, and I realize it's not always normal, and so that'll be a part of our day this morning as we go. Oh, that's all right. No, you're good. He's like, I'm going to wait because it's going to be a minute. Yeah. So all that being said, I'll just begin, no. You know what, let's go ahead and do the song. That's going to help us if anybody needs to make those choices. So the way that we've been doing this is that we've been learning the Ten Commandments by memory in song. Yes, sir. Please, let's go ahead and stand up. We're going to sing this beautiful song that I know you sing on your way to work every morning, on the way to school, that it's become something that, we sing it just so regularly.
It's stuck in my head.
I'm not sure stuck in my head was what I was going for, but you know our friend Nathan.
You're getting the point across.
Yeah, we are getting the point across. So by the way, if you remember last week, do not murder. It makes sense then that adultery this week is the murder of the heart. So do not murder, do not commit adultery. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of slavery. Have no other gods before me. Don't take my name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it always holy. Honor your mom and dad. Do not murder. Don't commit adultery. That's always good. I like it when we end like that. It's just so much fun. Good job. Go ahead. And actually, we'll go ahead and read this morning. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and read. Stand up. I know. It's in a couple of more of these, and we'll actually have a lot of steps involved, and everybody will be in good shape. But it's, again, a really difficult one to read. This is always when I ask you to read like 3 or 4 chapters, remember these days, okay? Just please. So we read Exodus 28:14. We read together, "You shall not commit adultery." Yeah, there we go. That'll work. So perfect. Decades ago, when I first came to San Antonio, I got invited by who would then later become my mentor, David McNiskey, who was the senior pastor of Alamo Heights United Methodist Church, to go and see a guy named Gordon MacDonald speak. Now, I didn't know anything about Gordon MacDonald at the time at all, but I knew that he was going to be speaking to pastors about sort of how to be healthy as pastors, and also to how to have a healthy marriage. Kathy and I had been married at the time for a couple of years, and so that seemed like a good thing to do, and so I did. I went with him to this lunch. Gordon MacDonald, who I did not know, I will say David McNiskey had given me a book by Gordon MacDonald just a couple of days earlier called Ordering Your Private World. And I was like, ooh, that's an interesting book. But I put it down on my desk and didn't look at it again, and then went to this lunch. Gordon MacDonald spoke beautifully, powerfully, just like mind-blowing, thoughtful, helpful stuff about marriage, about fidelity, about covenant. It was really beautiful and really powerful. To this day, I can't say that I've heard anybody speak more eloquently about marriage. It was great. And it was a room of about 1,000 pastors, which is usually trouble, but I think everybody had behaved well. And so we'd gotten to the point where he said something that I did not expect. He said, okay, we're just going to go ahead and open this up for a question and answer time. And I thought, oh, that'll be fun. Do I have any questions I have? And I'm starting to think about this. And a younger pastor, older than me at the time, but still younger, stood up on the far side to a microphone, not too dissimilar to that. And he said, Dr. McDonald, it's really appreciate amazing talk, really helpful, took several notes, but I just have one question, and that's this. I know that a part of your life is that, well, let me say it this way, sir. How can you stand up there and say all the words that you have just said when it's public knowledge that you have committed adultery on your wife? How can you speak authoritatively to us when that is what we all know about you? Yeah, my favorite is my jaw dropped too, like full on, right? The whole room, quiet. And there was a combination for me, because part of me was like, how dare you ask that question? And then the dark little inside part was like, this is going to be interesting to see, right? I know. And so Gordon McDonald stands up to the microphone, and then we see a woman on about the front row, on that front side, stand up. And when she stands up, he takes a step back. And she walks up the stairs, and we were dead quiet. And so was he. And she gets to the microphone and puts her hand on the stand. And she says, good morning. My name is Gail McDonald, his wife. And she says, I'd like to answer that question. She says, Gordon has lived a confessional life, a life where he confesses his brokenness regularly and consistently. And she walked off. And she sat down. And he said, are there any other questions? And we were like, how did that go from to, oh my gosh, he's a ninja? It was amazing to watch, right? And wildly, we wanted to hear everything that he had to say. And needless to say, I went home and read that book. And to this day, it's one of the most dog-eared, highlighted books that I have. Gordon McDonald, Ordering Your Private World. This morning, I'd like for us to walk into the issue of adultery as openly as that conversation was, but also with the complexity and the layers and the power and the hope that is always around God's word. Does that make sense? So if we can walk this one out together, I think we'll get to a place of profound community strength. So I read the book, and one of the things about the book is it said, he presents this concept that was really powerful. And it's something that I didn't know, and he talks about it when it was in Florida. And he says in Florida, there's this really weird thing that happens. And what it is that every once in a while, the earth opens up and swallows a car or a building. It's just crazy. And so some of you know what I'm talking about. Those of you that know, these things are called, sinkholes. Really weird. This is the first time that I'd ever heard of them. Sinkholes. And sinkholes are really fascinating. If you don't know, essentially those things are above ground, have been built, and very slowly, very deep is all kinds of water. And that water is just slowly eroding things until eventually the structure above can't be held by the earth below, and then boom, it opens up. Kind of wild and out of nowhere. Takes a long time, and you can imagine, it just is terrifying, and it's something that they're trying to keep track of all the time, but people in Florida live with the earth opening up. There's a joke in there, but I can't find it. So this is a thing, right? What he basically says, and what I want us to think about, when it comes to adultery specifically, and any truly damaging sin in general, brokenness in general, don't think that you go out and think, hey, it's Wednesday. It's adultery day. No. The real brokenness of the things that we see and the way that Jesus encounters this is to say that there are small eroding moments underground that lead to profound damage in our lives. That ordering our private world with the same kind of intensity that we order our outer world should be the case. Think about how you do that. Even when you woke up this morning and made sure your hair was just right. My hair always looks good, but not everybody else's. No, I get up and I'm like, who is the old man? Oh, that's me, yeah. And so I have to do all kinds of and the things, and I get a shirt and I'm like, do I have to iron this? Yes, and so I do this whole thing and I get myself together best I can, and I show up and I try to present myself. That's just getting dressed. Then presenting myself, being in the world, being thoughtful, I work really hard on the external expression of me. What Gordon said is if we're not careful and we get to be driven people on the outside and not internally called people on the inside, then the next thing you know, this outer shine will just be destroyed by our inner chasm. It is a matter of time. It is a matter of time. Adultery is one of the best examples of all of this. In this moment when we have this profound move of the Hebrew people from Egypt out into the desert to be prepared to become a nation that will be a city, a light on a hill, that they will actually move into the promised land in which they will take that and then be those people for the world. That, by the way, if you're not fascinated with the reality that that part of the world is still, one way or the other, good or bad, right now, very hard, it's still the center of our conversations, and it is small as New Jersey. It's just wild to see what happens. Still true, still a part of things, and they're being prepared to be that here and now in this story. So now, this really powerful thing comes out, and so the first thing that we'll kind of walk into is the idea that there is this sort of sinkhole in communities. So the idea here is that as they're becoming a nation and as they're becoming a community, that they need that core center piece. And so the way that God builds it out is he says the core centerpiece of maybe the most important structural thing in the world, human community, strong human community, which, by the way, the studies on this stuff are profound. And you and I are going to get to take part in a global movement in the next couple of weeks around a thing called human flourishing through a survey. I'm so excited that we get to be a part of this. But one of the things when they do these studies is they begin to find out all these kind of powerful connections. In fact, did you know that when we're in groups like this, we do a thing called co-regulating? You know what that means? That means that we actually, when we're physically together, other people help us regulate our emotions. So if something happens that's really, ever been on an airplane and you have all kinds of crazy turbulence, but you look at the flight attendant and they're like, hey, do you want Sprite? And so when they say, you're like, oh, we must be okay. I know they're trained to do that, but this is the thing, right? We co-regulate, we do it all the time. As a parent, when your child is really firing off and they're overly emotive and everything else, our job as parents is to help them regulate. We know that it's a lot easier when they're babies than when they're 14, but remember when they're crying and we're like, you do this right here and you rock and you're calm and you're talking or you're singing. And eventually those we co-regulate. Don't think you're an individual. Here's what's wild. It's happening right now in this room when we gather to worship and we move out of the world and we gather together around a song or a prayer, we draw strength from each other. It's a mysterious, profoundly beautiful thing. At the center of that sacred, profoundly beautiful thing is a structure. That structure is a marriage. It's a family. And so what happens is these people are being brought out from slavery, and they are being invited to have a different kind of marriage. When you're a slave and you get married, do you actually think you only belong to each other? No. In fact, more precisely, who do you think your sexuality belongs to if you're a slave? Yeah, your master, that which owns you. And so there is a profoundly beautiful thing that happens when God says, look, this is what I want to do. I want you to know something. Your sexuality hasn't belonged to you for 400 years. I, the God of creation that created you and the beauty and power of that, I want you to know that your sexuality belongs to you. It belongs to you. And there's some people in here that don't know that. You've been brought up in a culture that's telling you that your sexuality belongs to a world in which it's a part of a larger conversation, or maybe you've grown up in a space where there's been a lot of control. Right here in the middle of this room, right now, in the most ancient of places, I'm telling you that God says your sexuality belongs to you. Period. So that's a powerful thing for a slave to hear. It also means that you can actually stay married. You don't have to break that. You have the freedom to do this. It's a powerful moment. Boom, now you can actually hold together so that this community can become a nation that's strong enough to allow for it to become that light, that city on a hill. There's another sinkhole. Whew, this one's tough. Seatbelts. Adultery in a family. Adultery in a family, again, does not come in an immediate kind of way. Although over all these 30 years of talking to different people who are struggling with adultery in their home, in their family, almost all of them have said some kind of version of it just happened. Which, if you're on the outside of it, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. It just happened. But if you begin to think about almost all of the sin that you ever really encounter, you'll find that that's exactly what happens. Tiny little choices, tiny little yeses, tiny little erosions, tiny little structures that we allow or that we do, and the next thing you know, sinkhole. You know, when we talk about divorce, which is a difficult issue as well, I can say that it says in the Bible that God hates divorce. It's a tough thing to hear. But when you really step back and look at it and say, there is a group of people that hate divorce more than God. Do you know who they are? Divorced people. They hate it because it's so painful. Nobody steps up in front of a person like me and says yes that doesn't mean it. It is the most public heartbreak people experience. In a very similar way, there is this thing called adultery that comes upon us that nobody intends, but these little things. And at the same time, I remember a young man and his family was going through, one of the parents was involved in an affair. And I said, how are you doing? He says, it was his dad. He said, it's like my dad brought us into the living room and got us all around like we were going to have a holiday, and then he just put a grenade in the living room. He just blew up our family. And I'm sure that that's true. It is. Adultery is a destroyer. But I can also say for sure, knowing the dad, that was never his intention. So here's what I'm saying. Take a minute. Boy, I can feel this pushback on me this morning. Not from you. It's weird when that happens, I get like a fog. So if you're a prayer person, if you'll just dial in on that for me, it'll help. Thank you. What I'd like for you to do is almost like you're doing a cardiogram, like you're checking out your heart really clearly. Just in a really open, personal, and honest way this morning, ask yourself if there's anywhere you're giving things permission. You know, oh, she's my work wife. No, she's not. That's not a thing. Oh, well, you know, my wife doesn't have, or my husband doesn't give me the emotional content that I need. Please watch out. Do the work in your interior this morning without guilt or shame. You can feel that pushback too. It makes you kind of get on like do the work in your interior life to make sure that you are headed towards your marriage. My dad used to say, look, you're either headed towards your marriage or away. There's no middle ground. So do that real work. Do that real work. It will always pay off. You will never, ever regret doing the real work of your marriage. Never. And if you need support or help in that, ask me. I have been there with and for every kind of person and will be there with and for you. And so will this church, one way or the other. Please. Last is as personal as it gets, and it comes from there, and it's the sinkhole of us just as individual people. Most of the time when people enter into an adulterous relationship, it's because they're looking for an intimacy that they're not receiving somewhere else. The hard part about that is that in giving yourself away in a lie, you will not receive that intimacy in that place, and then you've imprisoned yourself from receiving it anywhere else. It's a great trick. It's a terrifying reality, but it's true. So the other part of it is making sure that we're doing the work in an individual way in the private parts of our world where things are really, really quiet, where nobody really knows your thoughts, to actually get as healthy as you can get, to build strength on strength, to recognize that there's power and hope, to engage in the joy of what marriage can be. Marriage is, in my opinion, when I got married, when I got engaged, I had a whole bunch of my friends. I told some of my friends, hey, I can remember one, his name's Brent. I was like, Brent, man, I'm getting married. Kathy said yes. And he goes, another line, bites of dust. And I was like, shut up, Brent, you know? And a lot of my friends, they start saying stuff like that. And people will tease you if you get engaged. You know, all this other kind of silliness. I'm not one of those people. And I don't think we should be. Marriage is a mysterious, wild, painful, confusing, impossible thing. It is also the greatest adventure outside of my relationship with Jesus. Ultimately, I do want us to talk about adultery openly. Having sex outside your marriage with another human being is a destroyer. And it destroys communities, it destroys families, but it destroys you. And so ultimately, that's true. But what I really want to say is the opposite. Marriage is extraordinary. Nathan, there's a book on that first row. Would you bring it to me? Yeah. Marriage is extraordinary. Marriage is joyful. Marriage is a mess. My mentor that I told you about, David Magnitsky, said early on, he said, as a leader, you're always going to want to be trying to kind of convince people to do something. It's what you do. He said, but what I want you to think about is this. If you want someone or a group of people to cross an ocean, don't tell them how to build a boat. Give them a love for the sea. Don't commit adultery. But don't not commit adultery because of all these sinkhole, terrifying, all this kind of stuff. Oh, that's true. Don't commit adultery because marriage is profound and beautiful. This is a devotional book by a guy named Frederick Buechner. Anybody ever heard of Frederick Buechner, just out of curiosity? Yeah. I read this every day. This is my personal devotional. I've done this for a long time. And the first time I did it, I was really surprised and just cried at the one of the days. And I'll find it. It's right here. And I was reading through, and I got to August 25th, and it was great. And August 26th was wonderful. And then I get up in the morning early on August 27th. Now, August 27th is my anniversary. And this last August 27th, I've been married to my wife, Kathy, for 31 years. And I thank you. Yeah. And I read this a couple of years ago on that same day and thought it was the most true thing I had read about marriage in a long time. And I've read it, obviously, every year since. And so I offer it to you with the hope, in part, for the love of the sea. It's called Greater Freedom, August 27th. I know several thoughtful and highly principled young couples living together without benefit of clergy or of anybody else who argue eloquently against the institution of marriage. As long as you both shall live is transformed into as long as you both shall love. And their view seems to be that to institutionalize such a relationship as theirs is to rob it of much that is most authentic and spontaneous and even human about it. They point out that for a man and a woman to commit themselves legally to honor and cherish each other for the rest of their lives is unrealistic at best and hypocritical at worst. Their love for each other should be bond enough to hold them together, and when the love ends, then the bond should end with it, and they should go their separate ways. As for me, I find much in this that is persuasive. Who can deny that a man and a woman have married for no more motive than edifying that it was the only respectable way to enter into a full sexual relationship, and that, as things turned out, they would have done better in every sense that one can imagine mattering much, either to themselves or to God, simply to have had the relationship and forgotten about the respectability which, once the first careless rapture was past, became a cheerless, if respectable, prison to them both. Who would argue that the vows exchanged at weddings are anything other than wild and improbable? Who can look at the apparent devotion and well-being of many an unmarried pair who live together, even have children together, and call them simply wrong, or either religious terms that we can think of? All I can say in response is that it is within the bounds of marriage that I, for one, found a greater freedom to be and to become and to share myself than I can imagine ever having found in any other kind of relationship. And that, absurdly hopeful and poorly understood and profoundly unrealistic as the commitment was, that girl in the white dress and I made to each other in the presence, we hoped, not only of most of the people we loved best in the world, but of God as well, in whose name Dr. Muhlenberg somewhat shakily blessed us. My life would have been incalculably diminished without it. Amen.